Okay, so you've just picked up a new DJI Neo 2, or you're at least thinking about it, and you want your footage to look cinematic instead of just that default drone footage. Well, this video is going to save you a lot of trial and error. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the exact camera settings that I use, when to change them, and why ND filters actually matter. Because once you understand this part, then everything else just clicks. So let's get right into it. Okay, the first thing is, let's talk about what cinematic even means, because it's not having a $5,000 drone or some crazy expensive gear. Cinematic is really just three things: natural motion, controlled exposure, and smooth movement. And that's it. You can do it, everybody can do it. And here's the thing with bad drone footage, it usually comes down to one problem, and that's shutter speed being way too fast. The camera's just doing whatever it wants, and you just end up with footage that feels harsh, digital, and choppy. You see, the biggest mistake that people make with small drones like this is that they let the camera make all the decisions for them. So we're going to change that right now. But firstly, we want to make sure that our recording stabilization is turned off and aspect ratio is 4:3. Now this is really important, and I'll explain why shortly. Let's start with the frame rate, because this sets up everything else. Now for the Neo 2, I shoot in 30 frames per second pretty much all the time. Now that's my go-to for everything cinematic. I'll bump it up to 60 frames per second, but only if I want to slow something down in post, like a smooth reveal shot or a dramatic moment. But day to day, I'm shooting in 30 frames per second. You want to keep it simple. Just remember this: 30 for normal speed and 60 if you're planning to do a little bit of slow motion. Now let's talk about shutter speed and this 180-degree shutter reel. Alright, here's where it gets important: shutter speed. Now I know there's this thing that's called the 180-degree shutter reel, but don't worry, it sounds technical, but it's super simple. Your shutter speed should always be double your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be at 1/60th of a second. And if you're at 60 frames per second, well then your shutter speed should be 1/120th of a second. Now why does this matter? Because this gives you the all natural motion blur that everybody wants. It's what makes movement look so smooth and film-like, instead of it being digital and jittery. Listen, if your shutter speed is way higher than this, like if it's at 1/500 or 1/1000, well then your footage is going to start looking harsh. It's going to start looking jittery and video game-like, and that's not what we want. So we want to lock in that double your frame rate for the shutter speed. That's the foundation of great cinematic footage. ND filters, the absolute game changer. Now, this is where a lot of people get confused about ND filters. Think about ND filters as just being sunglasses for your camera, and that's it. Now, here's the problem. You're going to go outside on a bright day and you're going to set your shutter speed to 1/60th of a second, just like we talked about. And your footage is going to completely look blown out and overexposed, just like this. The camera wants you to let in less light, so on automatic it would kind of crank this shutter speed up to like 1/1000, and boom, you've lost that cinematic motion blur that we've just set. But here's where ND filters come in. Now they will block the light so you can keep that shutter speed at 1/60th even in bright conditions. NDs come in different strengths, and here is exactly how I choose what to use. If it's an overcast or a cloudy day, you want to be using an ND4. If the light is sunny but partially cloudy, you want to be using an ND8. If it's a bright day outside, you want to be using an ND16. Now, if it's harsh midday or summer sun, you want to be using an ND32 to an ND64. And honestly, a decent ND filter set for the Neo 2 is around 30 to 40 bucks, but it's totally worth it for your footage. Now, let's make this really practical. And here are my exact settings for different shooting conditions. I will also leave a downloadable PDF file for ease of access for you guys. So when you're out and about flying, you can always refer back to this to help you dial in your best settings. So just remember, for a bright sunny day, this is when you're going to need to lock everything in. You want your 30 frames per second, we want to be hitting a shutter speed of 1/60th, an ND16 or an ND32, and you want that ISO as low as possible. I say usually at 100, but I never really take mine above 100. For a cloudy, overcast day, that's way more forgiving. We're still going to be rocking 30 frames per second at a shutter speed at 1/60th, an ND4 or an ND8, and as always we're going to keep the ISO at 100. Now we don't need a strong ND filter sometimes on a cloudy day. The light's already diffused, so everything is easier to expose. Now let's talk about the golden hour, where the Neo 2 absolutely punches above its weight. We're still rocking at 30 frames per second with a shutter speed at 1/60th. Now often an ND4 is needed, but sometimes it's not. Let's keep the ISO at 100 as always as well. Remember earlier when I said we want to keep our ratio at 4:3 and we don't want to turn on the stabilization? Well, here's why. You should use an external stabilization tool just like gyroflow. It's free, it's easy to use, and it can change your 4:3 aspect ratio into anything, to normal, widescreen, even short format. But it will iron out any jitters or jumps in your footage to a buttery smooth finish. Now, as I said, it's free to use, and I'll leave a link in the description if you guys want to go and check that out. The last thing I want to talk about, and this is huge, is your flying technique. Now, your flying technique is half of the cinematic look. You can have perfect settings, but if you're whipping your drone around like you're playing a video game, it's not going to look that great. So slow down your movements, use gentle yaws, no big crazy spins, and plan your shot before you even take off. The smoother that you fly, the better these settings will look, trust me. A quick note on colour and image settings before we go. Keep your sharpness low and neutral. We don't want to crank it up because it'll just turn everything artificial looking, and it's harder to colour grade later on. And I know that this Neo 2 hasn't got a D-Log M, but we can still do touch-ups. So we want to keep our sharpness low or neutral, very minimal noise reduction, and don't go crazy with your saturation in post, because it's easier to fix colour rather than it is to fix over-processed footage. So keep it clean, keep it natural, and you'll thank yourself later while you're editing. So there you have it. The exact settings that I use to get the best cinematic footage from the DJI Neo 2. I mean, it's not that complicated. It just takes a little intention. If this helped you level up your drone game, or you got any type of value whatsoever, can you please hit that like button and smash subscribe, as it really helps my content get out there to a lot more drone pilots. I'm Adam from Drone and Lens. You guys have been absolutely awesome, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Thank you so much for watching my video, and if you feel like you got any type of value whatsoever, can you please hit that like button and smash subscribe. I'm Adam from Drone and Lens. You guys have been colourful, and I hope to see you all in my next video.